As protesters staged large-scale demonstrations across the country on Sunday, expressing outrage at the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and more broadly anger at police brutality, U.S. President Donald Trump's tweets have added fuel to an already tense situation. Twitter has added a warning to one of U.S. President Donald Trump's tweets about protests in Minneapolis, saying it violated the platform's rules about glorifying violence. "These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen," Trump tweeted about the protesters. "Any difficulty and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you." Twitter did not remove the tweet, saying it had determined it might be in the public's interest to have it remain accessible. Trump noted that nobody came close to breaching the WhiteHouse fence. If they had, they would have been greeted with the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons. Trump, fearing for his own safety, had the Secret Service agents rush him to the White House bunker on Friday night as hundreds of protesters gathered outside the executive mansion, some of them throwing rocks and tugging at police barricades. Trump spent nearly an hour in the bunker, which was designed for use in emergencies like terrorist attacks. Joe Biden, the former vice president, touched on the subject by saying, "This is no time for incendiary tweets. It's no time to encourage violence," said Biden, without mentioning Trump by name. "This is a national crisis. We need real leadership right now." People are comparing recent tweets of the president's with tweets from last month where he was siding with the protesters. In a provocative series of tweets, he appeared to support protest movements popping up around the country, calling for an immediate end to the lockdowns imposed on Americans in order to contain the coronavirus pandemic. U.S. President Donald Trump described hundreds of armed, primarily white protesters who stormed the Michigan Capitol building as, quote, "very good people," amid accusations that the demonstrators with guns were acting like terrorists in the way they protested the state's coronavirus lockdown. Many of the protesters showed up with AR-15 rifles, tactical gear, and a mix of camouflage and star-spangled apparel for their American Patriot rally at the state capitol in Lansing, Michigan. Trump began his tirade with a call to liberate Minnesota. He quickly followed with two more letters calling for similar action in Michigan and Virginia. The public is calling on Trump to stop tweeting. Donald Trump has urged governors, law enforcement officials, and national security officials to take a more forceful approach in responding to protests. Trump repeatedly urged the participants to act more forcefully and also urged the officials and governors not to be weak. The president warned them against being overridden and argued that if they did not dominate protesters, "You are wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks." In Canada, 11 people were arrested after tensions flared between protesters and police following a Montreal anti-racism demonstration on Sunday, with acts of vandalism on display. Canadian leaders have expressed concern regarding the happening in the U.S. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the act in the U.S. "We need as a society to stand together, to stand up against discrimination, to be there for each other in respect, but also understand that we have work to do as well in Canada in our systems that we need to work forward on." NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was emotional over Floyd's killing as he spoke from personal experience of being discriminated against. And Conservative leader Andrew Scheer said he was heartbroken by Floyd's killing and that no one should have to live in fear of the police. Around the world, people also spilled over to the streets for demonstrations. Thousands of people demonstrated in central London, chanting "No justice, no peace" in Trafalgar Square. There were protests outside the U.S. Embassy in Copenhagen and Berlin on Sunday. As well, at least 4 solidarity gatherings were held in New Zealand with massive crowds. The public is also saying not all protesters are committing acts of violence or lighting things on fire. General consensus has been that people want peaceful protests, not violent protests. There has been gross negligence when it comes to police and racial sentiment, and as a result, a lot of volatility is being witnessed around the globe. Floyd's death is not a one-off, but instead shows the systemic racism that's been ongoing. For local, national, and international stories, as well as more great video content, log on to darpanmagazine.com.